Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the PAC 750 XSTOL. We're going to be doing the classic cold and dark startup, where we're going to be taking off, landing, a little bit of navigation, a little bit of systems. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, this aircraft was designed out of the box to be a very, very short takeoff and landing kind of an airplane. This thing was originally said, hey, we just need skydiving. Eventually they said, well, we could probably do a passenger version if we put some chairs in here, or a cargo version. And I just love the idea of, just kind of sitting here and enjoying the noise is basically what I'm going to call it here. Aircraft-wise, not the most complicated aircraft as far as complexity goes. Obviously, we're dealing with a turboprop. You have an interesting fuel system that you have to kind of fit a little bit with. And there's a couple little the things you got to kind of keep an eye out along the way, and we'll take a look at that as we get going. So first things first, we have our standard little checklist there that we're just going to be kind of working through. For those of you who have a copy of this aircraft, you want to get to page, let me see here, this is page 8 of the user guide, and we'll just kind of work our way down. So first things first, pre-flight inspection should be complete, which it is. Passenger briefing, safe. This is the fire extinguishers. This is if we're on fire. This is your job. Do you have any questions? Good enough. Crew entry doors, we're going to make sure those are all locked and secured. We have a number of different doors on here. Obviously, we've got a little hatch that is chilling down here on the side. And we also, of course, have the little hatch that's away in the back that lets kind of the passengers in and stuff like that. We're going to make sure our harnesses are secure. I just have to make sure my seat, I'm on a little office chair here. I'm going to make sure it's locked so I don't flip backwards. So we're going to go down to the fuel shutoff valve. That's this little guy right here. So what this is, that's off, that's on. So we just want to make sure that's in the correct position. We're going to make sure the parking brake is set. I love how both of these are in the same spot. Wonderful. We're going to come down here. We're going to make sure the power lever. Now on a turboprop, and we'll talk about this in a future video, there's actually multiple different modes here. You can see ground idle, flight idle, takeoff, and as a matter of fact, we also have reverse. So it's important that we have free travel there as we're kind of playing with it. Propeller lever, we're just going to go ahead and cycle that, make sure it works properly. You'll notice that you have a couple different modes. You have your minimum, and then you can actually pull it all the way back into the feather position, which is definitely something we're going to leave it in. We're also going to go ahead and make sure the condition lever is nice and smooth. Notice it has multiple zones in it. So we're going to be leaving it in the cutoff position for now. We just want to make sure it moves smoothly. We're going to take the flap lever. We're going to put it into the up position. We're going to make sure the generator master switch is off. I'm going to float down here. There's my generator. We're just going to make sure it's off. It doesn't need to load thing. Battery master switch. We're going to flick to the on position. You're going to get a bunch of angry pretty much right away here. One thing I would like to do, though, is I like to switch to the default there. I like that one, but this one's a little easier. Just going to go ahead and check these out real quick. Just a little fast one. Make sure everything looks good to me. Everything looks good to me. I'm not going to stress about it too much. We're going to make sure the fuel switch, which is going to be right down here, we're going to flip that into the automatic position. We're going to make sure that the ignition switch is in the automatic position, and we're going to make sure the start switch is off. Avionics masters are both going to be in the off position. We're going to make sure the nav lights, which are exterior lights, we're going to turn those into the on position. External lights are going to be off. I'm going to turn the beacon light on, their beacon light on, because, science. Internal lights as required, don't need any pitot heat, should be in the off position, which it is. We're going to make sure the IPS separator is in the normal position. We're going to make sure the oil cooler heater is in the normal position. We're going to double check to make sure the warning caution panel, we tested it, enunciator checked, fuel sufficient. All right, let's go take a look here. We have 1,044. The two tanks are looking pretty good. They're never going to stay that even this entire flight. It's nice to think that they could stay that even, but they won't. It's just the way it is. Volt meter, ammeter. This is one of those things I learned about later that actually is really important. You want to make sure this is high enough so that we don't get a hung or slow start on a turboprop, and 25.2 is going to be plenty for us. This is going to slowly drop. Now, if we wanted to have fun, we could actually come over here and connect that, and now we have ground power, and we should get a little angry light letting us know that we have external power here. So if you're worried about killing the battery, that's a fantastic way to prevent that from happening. So now that that's all set, it's time to go ahead and get us started. So we're going to do an external power start here to keep it super duper simple. Very, very easy. We're going to make sure the power level is idle. We're going to make sure the propeller lever is feather. Condition lever is going to be the cutoff position. Area is going to be clear. Hey, clear prop. Clear prop. Clear prop. He doesn't seem to want to pay attention. He knows what I mean. So what we're going to do is hit the start switch for a moment, and we're going to confirm to make sure all of our angry lights are on. In the moment we have 13% on the NG, we're going to go ahead and pop it to the ground idle position. Watch how easy this thing is to start. Click. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Good. So the NG is going to start coming up. It's 13%. We're going to pop this into the middle position, and we're just going to watch it. So this is where you want to keep your hand on the red handle. You want to make sure you do not exceed your maximum temperature. This thing is the coldest starting turboprop I've ever seen in my life. Usually they go boing and go fly up to 1,000 degrees, and they slowly back up. So no issues there. So I can see, take a look right now, engine condition's good. We have very, very little RPM. The propeller is basically going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? The gas generator is working. I can tell that by looking at it right now. Everything looks pretty good to me, so I'm not stressed about it. We want to make sure a couple lights went off here. Start went off, is good. Fuel pump light should be off, which is exactly what we wanted to do. Ignition light should be off, which it is. ITT needs to be within limits, which it is. Oil pressure, we need to make sure it is correct, which is a little high, but it's legal. Oil temperature, we're just going to pop that over. Yeah, you can see the oil temperature is fine, but that's what that little green light means anyway. Propeller lever, this is the fun part. We want to disconnect external power. Nothing bad will happen, don't worry. We're going to go ahead and flip on the generator master switch. We want to confirm that we're charging. Yep, we're charging. Good. We're going to go ahead and turn on our avionics switches. That's going to be AV1 and AV2. They're down here. Everything's going to freak out and do its quick little test. And we're going to go ahead and all of our radio and nav aids and things like that. So I'm going to go flip this into altitude mode, swap it over to VFR, so I don't have to worry about that too much. We're going to make sure the inertial separator is set, but before we do all that, we're going to disconnect our ground power, which is kind of a big deal. We're showing a little bit of a discharge. That does not surprise me. You can see we're at 35 amp discharge here. If I increase the power a little bit, do you see how the generator is starting to catch it? But right now my RPM is just a little too low. So we're going to take the propeller lever now, and we're going to smack it to the full forward position. That should get things moving just a little bit. I know some of you are going, how come this is showing nothing? Because we haven't hit the minimum yet. So you can see less than 1250 is that light. Now we're starting to spin up, and our generator, yeah, see our generator is functioning properly now. Sweet. So we're going to play with the inertial separator to see exactly what happens here. Go ahead and click it. Nothing goes bad. We're going to click it again. Looks pretty good to me. Pitot-static heat. We're going to go flip that sucker on real quick so that angry light goes off. And we're not going to stress about that too much. Inertial separator set. Before takeoff check, we're just going to zing right on down here. We're going to make sure the trims are set for takeoff. Now for takeoff for this one, you can see my default position is pretty neutral. I like the dead center of the green region. Some people would think this is too much. I think this is almost not enough. You'll know what I mean when you go to pull back the first time. Flight instrument's going to be set. This is Elizabeth Island. This is off the shore of Connecticut. There's not a lot of altitude here. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Looks good. We'll go ahead and set our initial heading here. Why not? We're going to be heading basically up to Chester, which is a very short flight for us. But again, I wanted to keep it short for the purpose of the video. We're going to go ahead and switch to nav mode because we're in a GPSS mode. And you can see that it shows us a nice little map. You can actually see the individual waypoints. You see something really wild. You can actually zoom out on this map and you can actually see where all the different locations are. And like I said, that's just like the coolest little thing. Like this thing's so cool. I like this thing. That's all set the way that I want it to be. Flaps are going to be set for takeoff, so we're going to do one click of flaps there. Propellers going to go test that thing out. And we can just test to make sure it doesn't get angry at us. Nope, no issues. Engine instruments are good. Avionics set. External lights set. Pitot heat on. Doors and harnesses. That would have been pretty embarrassing. Annunciator lights, they should all be extinguished. Beautiful. We're going to make sure the flight controls are free and correct. Oh, yeah, it's nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Takeoff safety brief. Okay, we're going to be taking off, let's see here, that's Elizabeth Field. We're going to be taking off in that direction. I'll get the number of the runway. We're going to be taking off runway 25 in the event that we have an engine failure on the first half of the runway. We're going to apply full beta range. We're going to hold on the brakes in the event that we have a takeoff failure. After we've already reached in the air, we're going to aim right past the beach and go swimming. In the event that we have an engine fire, oh boy, we'll probably go swimming again. So again, this would be normally when you run through your brief and explain all the different things that are going to happen. All right, let's do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the parking brake and nothing will happen. Now this aircraft is kind of neat because it's a turboprop and it is one of the lowest parked torque aircraft I think I've ever experienced with the turboprop. So if I take my throttle and I push it to there, you would expect this thing to start showing a change in torque, but it doesn't because it's a less than 18 torques here, which is why it's showing up. It doesn't actually instrument. I tap it again. Again, I pushed it about a quarter of the way here, and we've got a propeller increase, but the aircraft is not even moving. I push it even further ahead. Nothing. Look at how far. I've got about half propeller travel, and now we're starting to get some torque. And now you can see we're starting to get rolling along here. Now, usually with turboprops, so we don't ride the brakes. If we want to speed up, what we do is we apply power. If we want to slow down, we use the beta range, which is going to go ahead. You can see my little light comes on there. Think of it as reverse thrust. Normally, when you're operating a turboprop aircraft and you're on the ground, you leave your engine condition in this kind of ground idle mode, which gives you direct access to the control of the propeller, which now means if I push the propeller forward, you basically take a bigger chunk out of the air there, and that's going to work really well for us to control our taxi speed. Because believe it or not, I can throw this thing into reverse just like that. and you'll notice the whole thing goes brrr, and it slows us down. So I can control my taxi speed just by riding the reverse as well as the regular range there. And you can see just how incredibly cool that is as far as control goes. This will not work, by the way, if your propeller control is not all the way forward. And you're going to confuse the heck out of the poor propeller governor there. All right, let's make our way to the end of the runway here. We need all the runway you can get. This is such a tiny runway. First time I flew into here in the real world, it was in a Cessna 172. It was a November model. And I still don't know how I was able to get on the ground, like, safely. It's just there's no room. Of course, it all smells like salt water and stuff, which is super cool. I love the access for the blast pad there. All right, we're going to line ourselves up. Look at a little runway we have here. Yikes, I like that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and just run everything real quick. We want to make sure the compass and the directional indicator are showing the runway heading, which they are. Should be somewhere around 25, which, yeah, it is, so I like that. This would be a good time, of course, to go double check it for the governor overspeed option. That's this big old button here. We don't have the button, so unfortunately we can't run through that test. I'm not going to stress about it too much. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. We're just going to be using 54 torques, and once we get airborne, once we have enough distance, we're going to go ahead and pitch for about 91 knots indicated. And of course, we're also going to make sure that everything is set pretty well. All right, here we go. Here's the trick. Push the throttle about halfway, then realize you forgot something very important, which I must have missed on the checklist. Don't forget to switch this up to flight idle. So basically, we're telling the engine now, we're not interested in using all that beta range, silly propeller angling and goodness. We're interested in actually, we have places to be and time to go. And you'll also notice that even though my throttle, my power lever is all the way at 0, this thing wants to go already. So it's a very substantial difference as far as response goes. So do not forget that. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the brakes. We're going to smoothly apply. Notice how responsive the engine is now that we're in the correct idling mode. We're going to come right up to the top of the green. Check to make sure all the things are legal. Let go. Let's go. Now, like a good turboprop, our torque will go up and down as well. We go zipping down the runway here. What we're going to do is we're going to loosen up the front wheel as soon as we get to about 55, about 60 knots. You want to go ahead and get us up in the air. And you can see about 65 knots. We're up in the air without any drama whatsoever. So again, very, very easy aircraft to get airborne in this particular case. I'm just going to enjoy it, keeping an eye on all my lights. One of my lights, of course, is showing the color red. That is my governor for RPM there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back the propeller pitch down just a tiny, tiny bit. All right, we've got no engine weirdness, and we're good to go. We'll go ahead and pop up the flaps. When you pop up the flaps in this aircraft, it has a very, very pronounced loss of lift. You're going to feel it pretty much right away, and eventually you'll power through it. Now what we're going to do is pitch for 91 knots. That's a lot of trim, by the way. By the way, look at my trim setting. Remember how I mentioned a minute ago I didn't think it was enough? Look at how much trim I've got. Whew. Man, we need to have somebody in the back seat lean back more. All right, so I'm going to give a little bit of right rudder, and we're just going to enjoy a nice, relaxing climb out here. When you're flying with PACs, by the way, you want to keep in mind they get a little stressed out about steep angles. So even though this is completely acceptable from a, you can get away with this, and the plane's flying great, always be thinking about your passengers, too. All right, let's go ahead and take a nice, gentle right turn, and we're going to start making our way up to Chester. Now, Chester Airport, for those of you who don't know this part of Connecticut, is probably one of my least favorite airports. Not only is the runway short and narrow, it is on a plateau, it has no lights, and it's bumpy. It's really, really, really inconvenient. And when we get there, the airport landing in Flight Sim will not do justice to how incredibly sketchy the runway is. I think it's funny, my first encounter with it, oh, by the way, it's always windy too. So, like, ultra, ultra quadruple, mega quadruple points for that one. One of the things I always thought was kind of amusing with that in the real world was, coming and landing it with a nice complex aircraft with a propeller that was only a couple inches off the ground. It's a Mooney. That was dangerous. During climbing here, we want to monitor torque and all of our engine instruments to make sure they're in the green. Notice our torque has decreased. The air starts to get a little bit thinner as we climb. So if we want to maintain the same amount of power here, we're going to have to smoothly increase it. Keep in mind, as we increase this, these two are going to get much, much bigger as we continue our climb here. That's just, unfortunately, the nature of a turboprop beast is they tend to be designed to give you a certain amount of power up to a certain altitude. But eventually, you're either going to hit a limit on ITT, your gas generator speed, or you're going to hit a limit on your torque, depending on kind of like, is it hot outside, is it cold, what are the other ambient conditions. So we're going to go ahead and head up to 2,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a nice tap of trim. We want to get on that trim nice and early. And we're just going to start the leveling off process. The nose on this aircraft, it's just because of the seating position, at least the default seating position, you're always going to feel like you need to hold the nose up in order to keep the aircraft level itself. That's just kind of the nature of this particular aircraft. There we go. Get ourselves nice and leveled. A couple more taps of trim. And that's about 2,000 feet here. And that's pretty good. So what I like to do is just kind of keep an eye on the VSI a little bit. It takes a little bit of shenanigans in order to get it exactly where you want it to do, but it is a fairly responsive aircraft once you kind of get it up to the correct position. Oh, there we go. Levels off. Thank God we're over water. We're not getting bounced by the new turbulence model there. It does get bumpy in the real world, but it's not always that bad, especially as you get to a heavier plane. That looks pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and flick on the autopilot master switch. We're going to select the mode that we want to be on. In this case, I want to be in altitude mode. And notice that our S-Tech here is already indicated. I've already selected my GPS as my navigational source. I'm going to press nav now. And what the aircraft is going to do is it's going to latch onto the course that it was on. We were close enough to it. The GPS is not panicking. And this gives us plenty of opportunity to go ahead and set everything. Now, this aircraft is very, very simple to set up at the power situation, which I really got a kick out of. There are two different power situations in the book. The quick version says that you should be doing 45 psi along with 85% NP, 1850 RPM. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to reduce our PSI, which is, if you want to think about it, kind of like our manifold pressure first. Now here's a huge tip. If you're working on turboprops, you want to go a little lower than 45, because as we decrease the RPM, they're going to tend to kind of conflict with each other. You'll see what I mean. So now we're going to go ahead and reduce our RPM. I'm going to go ahead and smoothly do this. We're looking for 1,850. The book says you can do 1870 also. That's, like I said, 1850 is a nice square number, so I kind of like that, but you'll see what I mean. By the way, did you notice the torque came up as the RPM came up? That's incredibly realistic. This is a measure of reactive torque. It's not a measure of current torque. And there we go. You can see I actually didn't pull it back far enough. And that's one of the reasons why you always do your power lever before you do RPM. So we're at 45. We're at 1850. Looks pretty good. Our NG right now is hovering right around, let's see here. It says that we're at, yeah, it's pretty high. It's about 91.0. This isn't going to change that much during flight. This is fine. That's fine. That's fine. Everything's in great shape. Of course, we can come over here and push this button, get some stress out. This does work. But like I said, just a little confusing to look at kind of a thing. All right, what I like to do, of course, I like to kind of do like, what do you want to call housekeeping once I get up to altitude here. Good time to check to make sure your fuel is being burnt correctly. That looks good. I'm probably going to have a pretty big imbalance here. Yeah, about 10 pounds, or 10 liters, which isn't too bad. We're not in freezing. Our airspeed is well within the green here. We can go flip off our landing lights or anything that we need here. Kind of just sort of relax in this kind of portion of the flight. Other things I like to do during a little kind of a flight, kind of our housekeeping phase is just kind of monitor. One of the things that people forget is, you have a very complicated aircraft here, and it just takes one little thing that you weren't paying attention to completely throw you off. I'm looking at my automatic pilot, for example, here. I can see the trim lights going nuts. Now, the aircraft, the 182 that I fly in the real world, if the trim light's going off, it means you've done something wrong. But in this one, it's just notifying you of the fact it's adjusting the trim. By wrong, what it will do is it says, can you give me some up trim because I don't have enough authority to control the tail. So in this one, it actually says trim as in which direction it's currently operating. Now, obviously, it's working pretty hard. Another thing we can see is GPSS, which means GPS-assisted turning, which is exactly what we want. Coming down here, of course, our GPS is indicating we're getting pretty darn close to our destination. It's not going to take us up very long. So now that we're up at 2,000 feet and we're getting pretty close to our destination, it's time to go ahead and think about how we're going to descend this aircraft. Now, this particular aircraft is a turboprop, and which means if we want to go ahead and set ourselves in a situation where we want to do a very quick descent, all we have to do is take the power lever, pull it all the way back, and then leave the RPM lever where it is in its full forward position. If you do that, this aircraft will slow down fast. You can get this thing to be going down 2,000-3,000 feet per minute without coming remotely close to overspeeding the aircraft itself. I'm not going to stress about that too much. One thing I do want to check a little bit real fast while I'm kind of relaxing here. I'm just curious what we have as far as endurance goes. Just curious. Whoops, also going to push the right button. 7 hours. So this thing can definitely stay in the air a long time. Now, 7 hours, and of course we're doing about 131 here. I'll do the math for you real quick. 131 times 7, that's 917 nautical miles at current conditions. So keep in mind we're at, about the 85% power point here. So we can definitely reduce it a little bit if we wanted to save a little bit. So let's go ahead and head ourselves to the top of descent. All right, that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disengage my automatic pilot and push the nose down. Basically, for their descent checklist, it's pretty straightforward. They say just double check to make sure that you have the correct fuel systems. And if you did switch the fuel switch to manual mode, that you have had an opportunity to go ahead and switch it back off of manual mode. That little ding you heard was disengaging the autopilot. I'm just going to go double check. I can actually shut the master switch off too. I have a button on my joystick that turns it on and off, so that makes it a little bit easier for me. So what I should be doing now is I should be doing my approach brief. I should double check my before landing checklist. All right, before landing, here we go. So we're going to make sure the brakes are off. That's a fun tip for anybody who flies airplanes, by the way. Make sure your brakes are disengaged before trying to land. Otherwise, you shall destroy your tires and potentially roll the plane. So be careful with that. Propeller lever, we're going to make this full forward. I'm actually going to push it mostly full forward. I'm not going to go all the way here. The reason being is because of whoever built the governor on this thing, they just made it so it goes a little too high in the RPM. So I'm going to push it almost full forward. Condition lever, I don't know why you would pull it out of flight idle, but just in case you did, it's there. Fuel indicating. I love this. They just need to make sure the fuel's working, which it is. Landing light should be as required. So it's not required, but it's suggested. Flap's going to be as required, but we are too fast. And right off my nose is a lovely Chester Airport. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring us a little to the left here. Bring that lovely nose up. Just to kill a little bit of speed. That's about 1,200 feet. I like that. And I'm just going to kind of square us off the end of the runway here. Kind of take us into a right base sort of a pattern. We're going to go ahead and get that first notch of flaps in. The first notch is not the scary notch on this aircraft. The first notch is actually pretty mellow. The second notch, oh yeah, that'll get you slowing down pretty fast. And then right off our right wing, as you can see, that's that lovely Chester Airport, which I've been making fun of already. Sorry, Chester, it's always so dangerous flying into this airport. And like I said, I really wish you could see just how sketchy and bumpy the runway is. It's just like, seriously, people. So approach speed on this one is pretty straightforward. Usually between 70-75 is kind of the sweet spot as far as approach speed goes. You don't need to come much slower. Like they say, about 75 is what the book says. You could probably get it down to 70. I probably wouldn't go less than that. That's starting to get a little on the sketchy side. All right, let's go ahead and turn final. I'm going to go ahead and bring my last notch of flaps in. No need to worry about the gear or anything like that. Get ourselves in a nice, well-coordinated right turn. And now this is one of the cool quirks of this aircraft. If I want to slow down, I just have to pull the nose up just a little bit. As you can see, I'm about to stall. That's literally how easy it is to lose altitude with that last notch of flaps. There's the warning. We're going to go ahead and give it a little bit of power. Remember, you're on a turboprop, so it's going to take a little bit of effort to get this thing to work. So when you see it start to respond, you want to actually kind of catch it. All right, it's about 76, 77 knots. Did I mention this is a tiny runway? Look at this. Look at this runway. You have to experience it in the real world. It is just, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. All right, we're going to more than made the runway, so we're going to go ahead and power idle. We're going to hold the nose up. A little bit of crosswind, as always. We're going to go ahead and settle us down. We're going to hold the brakes, full beta range. We're going to pull the stick towards us. And we're here. Whoa, I had to be careful there. Nice, that's it. Now, as you can see, the ground roll in this aircraft is not particularly extensive. What you do, of course, is you have to be careful with the reversers that you don't hit the brake in reverse. If you hit the brake in reverse, guess what? You strike the tail. So you want to be very careful with this. Oh, he's telling me to come to the left here. I'm going left. I'm going left. I'm going left. I'm still going left, man. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Oh. Stop. Nice. All right, we have reached our destination. So this is a really slick plane. Like I said, I was very impressed with it in every way. I'm still working on the landings. I love the short, grass landings on this thing because it's just like, wow, I can't believe I got away with that. Range on this thing is pretty good. Stability on this thing is pretty good. So it works really, really well. When it comes to shutting down, we'll go ahead and deal with our securing. Inertial separator, we're going to put in the normal position, which is set. Power lever is going to be set to idle, which it is set to. The parking brake is going to be set on. Propeller lever, check this out. Pull it back, and then we're going to pull it all the way to the feather position. So the propeller is going to go, why did you do that? I was still running. All right, we're going to set our fuel condition lever to the off position. Nice. That's going to kill it pretty darn quick. I don't know why the well, it's got to cool off. That makes sense. All right, lights are going to be set to the off position. Go ahead and shut everybody off. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Avionics is going to come off. It's going to let me know. Would you like to do this? Like, no, I wouldn't like to do that. We're just going to go ahead and make sure everything else is set off here. Off. And that's all there is to it. Now what we do is we go ahead and shove the control lock into place, which is going to probably, if I had to guess, I'm guessing it's one of the ones that grab it like this and kind of come across, or it snaps it onto here. But I don't actually know. But other than that, enjoy.